This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Good evening. Love that bass line. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, along with my engineer, Rob Barrett. Thank you so much for stopping by tonight. We bring you authors, mostly first-time authors, but not all first-time authors. But they are authors who went through exactly what you're going through, trying to get that first book out of their head and onto the page. So listen up. You know how some people say, I could never be a criminal defense attorney because I could never represent someone I knew was guilty of some kind of horrible crime? Well, that's what David Payne's book is based on. It's called Just Punishment. It's about a woman who disappears from Baylor University and her brother's efforts to find out what happened to her. And David, you say it pulls at the very fabric of our constitutional rights to a fair trial.
I do believe that we have those constitutional rights, and I'll be the first to jump on the stump and argue them if they've been violated. But at the same time, I think there's a point where we start to abuse those rights. We take the accused and we put them on such a pedestal at times that it is quite distasteful. I don't think it's what the Constitution necessarily drafted to that extent. Fair trials, speedy trials, right to a jury, all those things are taken into consideration, but oftentimes we're treading so lightly on moving forward. You know, when we have clear evidence in front of us, so it makes it difficult. I know society's struggling with it. I know
society's always struggled with it. But in this particular story, just quickly, what is this particular story about? A little girl disappears? What
this story is about, it's set in Texas near Baylor University. A young, prominent lady disappears. Her brother happens to be going to school there as well, and they're both from a established family. So the story is about her disappearance and the fact that her brother eventually makes his way through law school, and then out of sheer frustration with utilizing every state agency and federal agency to find her, he ends up basically using some different tactics which pull on the constitutional fibers, tactics such as private investigators who may utilize different techniques by way of investigation. And then he is confronted by a female who is a well-educated and very gifted criminal defense attorney, and she pretty much fights him at every turn. Eventually, the story takes a dramatic twist where this very same criminal defense attorney is faced with some difficult decisions of her own related to her family. And her response to that is interesting. I will say that there are some courtroom scenes in the book that go through a list of various crimes and things that have occurred. Those are real stories. Those have been changed, obviously, names and things like that, but the heart of those stories are real. And when you read that portion, in particular, the courtroom drama, it's sobering and it's amazing because there are stories on both sides of a capital punishment argument that are sobering. They're just shocking. And the research that we did on the book was extensive. You know, I've been doing this now for 25 years.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You know, what's hard is to try to walk through a system that you know is not flawless. I mean, it's got its problems, but everyone expects a perfect result.
Yeah.
Yeah, the accused expects a perfect result. The victims expect a perfect result. And it's just not going to happen. It just can't happen.
Right. Well, you know what? Thank you for trying to shed some light on this and writing a book that people can understand, maybe have a better understanding of how things work. Professional wrestler turned actor Pepper Martin was the tough guy who tried to beat up Clark Kent in Superman 2. Remember that? You can YouTube it if you don't. He appeared in bunch of TV shows and movies back in the 60s and 70s, including the Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds. And now he's published a book entitled Shrapnel of the Soul and Redemption. Hello, Pepper Martin. How you doing? Welcome to the show. Can you explain that title for me?
Well, Shrapnel of the Soul is an unusual title, and it came from a doctor friend of mine when I was in counseling when I was in my early 40s, and he said one day, he says, Pepper, your life, it's as if a hand grenade has gone off and your soul is full of shrapnel. And I never forgot that. And that's where the first part of the title came from. And, of course, the redemption started when I came to the Lord and accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. So that basically is how it all began.
But this is your life. This is the story of your childhood as the son of a Canadian bootlegger.
Yep.
Life on the road as a professional athlete.
Yep.
Professional wrestler, football player, actor, producer, writer, husband, father, grandfather. My gosh. I mean, so many things.
Tell you what, Alice, I want the radio to laugh. There's some great stories in there. And most of all, if this book helps someone, we all have shrapnel in our soul, every single human being, from things that happen in our life. People can learn to forgive because we can't change our history. And that's the message I put in the book. And hopefully they see it, that we can't change our history. We look back. We have to forgive people and move on with our life, because I spent most of my life full of anger and full of hate, and you just can't live that way.
But what's interesting, though, about you, Pepper, is that you're full of successes.
Yes, I was very fortunate, very lucky.
How was that possible? Is that how you fought your demons, by just being successful at everything you did?
I never gave that any thought, Alice. I really didn't. Things just happened, and I kind of went with the flow. When I came to Hollywood, that was by accident, really. Again, through friends. I had no theater background. But on the other hand, when I look back in hindsight, all the years of commentating, and in those days it was live, that helped me. That was kind of like the foundation that was laid for me. And I never had a problem acting. I was so full of pain and anger that when I got roles, I just acted things out. What I had to learn through the years was a technique. There is something to learn. Yeah, there's a craft to learn. But for the first X number of years, I just kind of winged it, and I watched other actors work and how they went about preparing for a role, and that's what I did. I write about that in the book.
What was the turning point for you? I mean, it says that you had ties to organized crime in the U.S. and Asia. You had a lot of dark times in your life. What was the turning point for you?
I guess the turning point came through a very unusual source, which was Harold Sakata, an Olympic champion, and he was a former professional wrestler, and that starred in Goldfinger. He was Odd Job, and he gave me an envelope when he came to visit me in Portland, and he said, Pepper, these people want to talk to you. And that's when I came to Hollywood, and things began to happen. I lived in a fantasy world, Al. My whole life lived in a fantasy world from the time I lost my mother right up until I was in my 40s. And I made enough money to make my fantasy world a reality. Thank God for my wife, Jordy. She's the one that raised the kids. She did everything. But then one day, the anger and the pain became too great. I needed help. And through a friend of mine, I went into counseling, and that's when I began to turn my life around.
Man, what a story, Pepper. Yeah, you know what? It makes you realize that the people you see on the big screen are people, just like you, just like me, and just like you, Rob. And they have demons, they have issues, and they deal with the same stuff we do. David Campbell couldn't get a newspaper story out of his head. It was about several stolen cars found dumped in a quarry. So he did some research about historic quarries in Needham, Massachusetts, and came up with a story entitled The Quarry. And to say it goes deep, no pun intended, would be an understatement. Am I right, David?
It's about a company that has a van hijacked. They're under a government contract, and they need to recover the van and find out whether the information or the devices in the van have been compromised. So they hire a marine salvager, and he gets together a crew, and he goes into the pit to find out what's there. It has extremely cross currents. Several people have died in the pit because of the currents, and no one knows why the currents are there. Basically, it's unexplored, and he goes down and he finds a lot of cars, but there is someone that does not want that discovery to be found. And that created a little bit of a mob connection there, that they have been using that as their disposal burial site. And when he comes snooping around it, they start reacting. They kill one of his men and kill off the connections to the people that he's encountered involving the quarry, and it ends up in a standoff, him and his men and about 15 gunmen. So there's a very large gunfight, and there's casualties both sides, mainly their side, and they pull the vehicles up and they start finding bodies in them and make some major arrests.
You know what? It sounds like a Mark Wahlberg movie. Good mystery.
Yeah, the first time that Page read the book, they said that it had good potential for a movie plot. You know, I am a beginning writer, nearly a beginning writer. That's my second novel. But I would have to agree. Not being modest or anything, but...
Your second novel?
Yes, the second published novel, I should say.
So you're a writer.
I've got several of the novels on the board, and a couple of them are about ready to start sending out to publishers. And, you know, the adventure fiction type has always been my absolute favorite genre. And because of that, I think I probably do it a little bit better than some other people.
Well, is that the kind of stuff you've read throughout your life?
Yes, it is. You know, I love the big disaster movies and, you know, the heavily plotted stuff. This one is not so heavily plotted. Actually, it's a very smooth read. I mean, it's very linear, and I wouldn't say to the point, but it's got good characterization in it, good separation of the characters. The more I think about it, it's just a clean little novel. Definitely interesting.
All right, I'll give you that, David. Thanks. Bullying is an unfortunate fact of life. It happens to a lot of kids. It even happens to adults. And certainly Kenan Keith is no exception. But what he did for his book entitled The Bullying of Natalie Cordova was take it to the next level and write about what a kid with no friends, no support, and no faith might do.
It's painful to imagine a child going through that kind of level of torment. And when I couldn't get the ideas out of my head, they were burning a hole in my psyche, so to speak. I really had to put it down on paper. So if there's any lessons in that book to be learned, I hope people learn them, and they don't go to the extremes she did, but just get people thinking about how their actions can have consequences. I think that's the biggest thing missing in our world today. People need to realize that their actions have consequences, and they need to think about the way you treat people, the way you treat yourself, the way you carry yourself in your environment. Because while Natalie may be an extreme case, a case of my imagination just going wild, you never know what someone's willing or capable to do once you push them to that breaking point.
Right.
Why is it even worth it? Why is it even worth it? I think what most victims of bullying would appreciate, they don't want the on-the-knee apology and beg for forgiveness and become best friends. Most people just want to live their lives, go off and do their own thing. And I think if bullies were to reflect about how their actions have consequences and just go to the victims and say, look, I apologize for the way I treated you. I'm going to leave you alone. You do you. I'll do me. You live your life. I think that would just be a tremendous weight lifted off of people's shoulders. They just heard that and were allowed to live their lives the way they see fit. Then that not only goes for children, it goes for adults that are bullied as well. Co-workers, people from different sections of life, different religions, different orientations, different races, even amongst the genders. Just let people live their life.
Yep.
That's all people ever ask. Let us live our lives. There's no need to torment us for being different. Everyone's different. So just allow us to be different, to express ourselves, and to be the people that we're meant to be.
So what'd you end up doing?
But I started submitting it to agents and publishers, and rejections every single time. It wasn't quite what they were looking for. It's not the kind of story they wanted to carry. It really came down to, as I did more research on these publishers and on agents, if you're a brand new author, there's really no place for you to go. And so I was actually watching television and I saw a TV ad for Page Publishing. So that got me thinking, that's got to be a sign. That's got to be God speaking. I need to call them and I need to check it out. And so I called them the very next day, and I got the author submission kit. And with the next day, I got a call back from Joseph Magnolia. He gave me feedback that it was going to be about 5 to 7 days while they read it and deliberate it. And I've got to say that was the longest 5 to 7 days of my life. It was very nerve-wracking. However, the day he called back 5 days later, it was one of the greatest moments of my life. As he said, they unanimously approved the story. They loved it. A few days later, I was in contact with Trevor Boyd and his team, and it's been a great journey since then.
Nice, Kenan. Page Publishing, making dreams come true. That's what we do. That should be our new motto. Hear that music? That's how I know it's time to take a quick break. But we are coming right back with a story about a summer place, an adventurous giraffe, and kidney-friendly recipes. You don't want to miss that. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Aw, thanks so much for coming back to the Page Publishing Book Club. Derek Chambers was diagnosed with something called FSGS when he was just 19 years old. Within 10 years, he needed a kidney transplant, and that turned out to be an inspiration for him. He's written a book. It's called Kidney Family Recipes. Derek, I would imagine diet is very important to you.
Yes, ma'am. When I was on dialysis for 11 months, they had like a very strict diet plan that you had to go by, so I had to modify what I ate and like reverse engineer a lot of my recipes so that I could eat them. Me, my mom, my grandma, they helped out a lot, but I had to ultimately decide what was tasty once I reverse engineered them.
What should we be eating if we want to keep our kidneys healthy?
Well, you want to look for foods that are low in sodium, potassium. You want to stay away from the salt, spicy foods like hot sauce, and especially like acids, whether it be citric acids or acids that are in ketchup or orange juice or regular milk. Potatoes that haven't been soaked, that will contain like a lot of potassium.
Are there recipes out there already?
Oh, yes, ma'am. When I was first on dialysis, my mom, she really set out to find me a few cookbooks, but I decided I'd do it myself.
Did you pick and choose from other recipes? Have you tried them all out?
There were already homemade recipes that we had our own, and I just decided to make them healthier.
Well, what kind of stuff does your family like to eat?
Well, we like to eat beef stews, chicken stews, potato salads, corn, peas, sweet peas. And there's a lot of stuff that I haven't even gotten into the book yet. Stuff like okra. I figured out healthier ways to cook okra. And fried foods, you're not allowed to have those. So I was able to develop a system where I can get my foods as close to being fried without it being fried.
That's great.
And make homemade sausage. I mean, it's breakfast burrito.
Are you sharing your recipes?
Oh, I had one friend on dialysis, Sister Mary Simpson, and she's one of the people who inspired me to write this book. I mean, she pushed me to write it. My mom asked me to, but I wasn't really thrilled at the idea. But when Miss Simpson, she goes to church with me,
mm-hmm.
and when she asked me to do it, and I remembered how I was when I was on dialysis. One of her granddaughters told me about how she was rarely eating, or eating so little. So I decided this is something I need to do. And what really pushed me is a little while after I started writing the book, someone came by and told me that they needed some help, but I never got around to it. But what did happen was they passed away, and I saw their spouse at a Social Security office. And the way she was just out of it, that really hurt me to my heart, because I could have saved that person if I had just written the book sooner.
You think it's what they ate?
Yes, ma'am, because I knew about what they were eating, and it wasn't always the best.
Well, and it sounds like you've got another cookbook ready to go.
Yes, ma'am. I have one on standby, really. I'm just waiting
great.
to get the funds up.
That's great.
Yes, ma'am. The National Kidney Foundation has even used a few of my recipes. I allowed it, and they said they would help me out a little bit. So it's MUSC, American University of South Carolina, and Carolina Nephrology. So I got some help, some great help. And Page Publishing has been good about helping me as best they can.
Well, you go, Derek. Have you ever heard anyone more positive? And this guy is 33 years old, and he's also recovering from lymphoma. Truly an inspiration. Speaking of inspiration, Debbie Garrett loved visiting her grandparents in northern Idaho when she was a kid, and she has some great experiences that she will never forget, especially now that they're a big part of her new book. It's called Paradise, Bed, and Breakfast. Hey, Debbie.
It's about, first love and how they got separated and how each of their lives goes on. It's like her child, or, her dream. When she grows up, she wants to have this bed and breakfast. And when she meets her first boyfriend, he kind of jumps on the bandwagon, too. He likes the idea. And they don't end up together.
It sounds like it took a bad turn at one point.
Circumstances, yes, stepped in. They were teenagers when they met, and circumstances stepped in, causing them to separate. And neither one of them knew why, at the time. They find out later what happened, but at the time, it wasn't a good split. And then it just goes on to talking about each of their experiences from the time that they are split apart.
So what's the takeaway for the reader?
Young love and don't ever give up.
Don't ever give up.
Don't ever give up. It's drawing from memories of going to Idaho as a young girl and experiencing some of the things that the characters in the book experience in that beautiful setting. Well, it's a fiction story, but there's always a little bit of experiences that I've had or heard about in my stories.
Yeah, but there's always a point at which you could have written this any time. Why now?
I had some medical problems for a while, and I had to be home, and I'm not used to being home. I've been employed here where I'm at for 32 years, so I'm not used to being home. And I have written since I was a young girl. I just have things in my head, and I just like to write them down. And I stopped writing for a long time, and then when I was home recovering, about 4 or 5 different stories just came out, just literally sat at the table and just kept writing and writing and writing. And this book is my favorite to this point of my writing. It's my favorite book. Since I was a little girl, I have written and been interested in writing. Even in college, I took writing classes. I just enjoy writing, making characters come to life.
And now finally, you've done it.
Yes.
Bring it all together. Doesn't it feel good?
Yes, it does. I was very, very nervous about getting it published. I always felt I'm just writing, for myself or for my kids. And I was really encouraged to try, and I did. And yes, it's very exciting to see this book transform from my mind into a book.
Aw, Debbie, nothing to be nervous about. We're all friends and supporters here at the Page Publishing Book Club. And really, there's nothing better than getting a project this close to your heart out of your head and onto the page. Finally, Wayne Gilbert was inspired to write children's books in a not so surprising way. I'll let him tell you. He's written 5 so far, and he's here to tell us about his first book published by Page. It's called Jeffrey the Adventurous Giraffe. Wayne.
Well, it's just about a giraffe, a really outgoing giraffe who decides he wants to visit 5 different countries. Around his ankle, he has the actual bandanas that indicates the countries that he wants to go to. So each country he goes to, he pulls up a bandana that tells you that he's been to that country he's done with. He wants to go and just find out what's going on in other parts of the world. He's not like any other giraffe. He's very outgoing, very curious, and he's not afraid of people. He's not afraid of anything, actually. He has a talent of whistling. Also, he can whistle tunes. He's not afraid of basically anything until he came across an airplane, because he loves watching airplanes fly overhead, So then he finally figures out that, well, that's something he doesn't want to do. But eventually he's going to have to overcome that fear in order to get to these other places that he wants to venture to. It becomes very popular when he goes to the country that he visited in the first book by the mayor there. So that's going to be that unlikely source that's going to help him to get out and branch out to other areas of the world.
Do you have children?
Yes, I do. I have a 5-year-old.
Okay, does your 5-year-old like your books?
Oh, she inspires me. Some of the stuff that she asks me around the house inspires me to write about that particular topic. For instance, there's one book I've done. It's called The Dragonfly and the Butterfly Wings. And we had metal dragonflies chasing butterflies going up our stairwell. And one day she just asked me, she said, what is those things? I said, dragonfly and the butterfly. Why the dragonfly chasing the butterfly? I said, well, the dragonfly is not really chasing him. He's trying to catch up with him so he can ask him how can he get wings as beautiful as the butterfly, because the dragonfly likes the butterfly wings. So that's the basics behind that story. But that dragonfly learns that his wings is just as beautiful as hers, and they're able to do other things that the butterfly wings can't do. And it's just one of those stories where, be thankful for what you have, and there's always someone who wish they had what you had, just as much as you wish you had what they had. So
when the kids come over, do you read them your books and say, tell Mom to buy one?
Oh, well, not. I actually passed out some of the books that I got through the promo deal that you guys have sent me. Then I have a business card that I'm going to put the rest of my books availability. It's going to happen. Yeah, I just like writing. I really do. I mean, I like composing music. That's been my thing I've been doing for the last, I don't know, since 79 or so.
Wow.
So then writing, write music is kind of the same as writing a story. But then I just wanted to gear everything towards children. I have my little one, and she's so inspiring.
See, that's what happens. You have kids, and your whole world opens up into possibilities you never even dreamed of. Thanks so much, Wayne. And that about wraps up another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Thank you so much for stopping by, hanging out, listening up. We hope you found something in the author's experiences here tonight that'll help you get moving toward your goal of publishing your first book. And I want you to know, Rob and I, we're right here. We're waiting. We're waiting to have you on our show. So come on now. It's summer. Find a nice spot. Sit down. Let your thoughts flow right through your fingers. We plan to be back next week for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Keep your fingers crossed that the Mets aren't on the West Coast, because we will be preempted, but we will come back. We always come back right here on 710 WOR. Have a great weekend.
This has been a podcast from WOR.